Hello and welcome to URISA's Excellence in GIS webinar series. The URISA Exemplary Systems and Government Awards recognize extraordinary achievement by government agencies in the use of automated information systems. This achievement is defined as the effective application of technology that can be measured in terms of improved government services and increased benefits to citizens. The award competition is open to all public agencies at the federal, state, provincial, regional, and local levels. My name is Xan Fredericks, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's webinar featuring the 2023 winner of the eSig Enterprise Systems category, King County Smart Building Management System from King County, Washington. Now, as we learn about the Smart Building Management System, I want to encourage you to enter your questions into the Q&A, and we'll let the team address those at the end. So joining us today from King County are Tamara Davis, the King County GIS Center Manager, and the Indoor GIS team. Welcome.
Thank you, Xan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamara Davis, and I'm the King County GIS Center Manager. My team and I are here to share with you our implementation story for ArcGIS Indoors. Our new normal happened when the pandemic hit. Oh, let me just go over what we're going to go over today. Next. We're going to go over our new normal, the implementation and early challenges, implementing ArcGIS Indoors, lessons learned, where we are today, and the road ahead. Our new normal happened when the pandemic hit, and things changed for everyone. For King County, those in the workforce who could work remotely were mandated to do so. 7,000 of the 15,000 county workforce transitioned to remote work virtually overnight. This drastic shift left many county buildings almost empty. The future of work has been one of the most important issues for county leaders today. Several department heads indicated a shift to a hybrid work environment, and in some cases, permanently working from home. Older buildings were challenged to meet modern workforce demands, so 2 large downtown buildings were slated to be vacated. One of these buildings delivered services to the public, such as marriage licenses and tax payments, to name a few, and both had hundreds of employees assigned to them. That is represented at the very top with the red buildings, number 2 and 8. We needed the ability to move to high occupancy buildings that were scalable. So the decision was to consolidate to Chinook and King Street Center, represented below in green, buildings 5 and 10. This also meant that for many employees, they would never have a permanent office space to return to, but shared spaces. This is how the need for cubicle reservations came to be. Chinook and King Street Center were chosen for phase 1 of ArcGIS Indoors. ArcGIS Indoors was another strategic opportunity for King County to have a GIS platform, an enterprise GIS platform. Now I'd like to introduce the indoor team. Myself, Tamara Davis, Debbie Bull, Michael Jenkins, our indoor product team lead, Bill Keller, Fred Lott, Lisa Owen, Josh Popelka, and Mary Ulrich. And now I will hand this over to Michael Jenkins, who will talk about the rapid implementation and early challenges.
Thanks, Tamara. So in the beginning of 2021, King County began planning for a return to the office. Several reservation systems were considered, including a fully self-developed system within King County Software Engineering. And ArcGIS Indoors was selected as it built on our existing GIS knowledge, skills, and platforms. The project was approved in April 2021 with a target of 21 floors across 2 buildings and an operational target of July 5th, when employees were expected to return to a hybrid work schedule. Fortunately for the team, this date was pushed back to October once management realized COVID-19 was not be over by July. And technically, we did have a usable product by that October deadline. Realistically, though, nobody was actually ready to go into the office until months later. We had to ramp up very quickly based on this timeline. We leveraged the Esri Advantage program to get an Esri team to help guide us into an initial operating configuration. We had a private hands-on workshop on data conversion from AutoCAD to the ArcGIS Indoors Information Model, and we even outsourced the conversion of 10 of those 21 floors to an Esri shop in India. ArcGIS Indoors was a fairly new product, and the reservations feature was quite new, and as such, it did not initially meet all of our requirements or our like-to-haves. It had a weird licensing deployment model, and it required several unexpected integrations with external systems that became quite significant. But based on our close contact with the Esri Indoors team, we had a good idea of what was on the product roadmap for the next year. So we were determined to work with it as is and to defer meeting some of the business requirements until they became available in later releases. We'll talk about some of these in just a second. So at the time, ArcGIS was licensed on a square foot basis. Kind of odd, but they were licensed on how many square feet of data you had in the Indoors Information Model. We initially opted for about 680,000 square feet to cover those 21 floors and give us a little bit of room to grow. We had two options for deployment. We could install and maintain it on our own ArcGIS Enterprise platform, or we could deploy it to a new ArcGIS online organization subscription. We chose to set it up in AGO and a new subscription, as this would be as close to a SaaS solution as possible. We also didn't want to take on the maintenance of the system, considering we were on such a tight timeline and had so many other things to do to get the system running. The licensing model has changed, thank goodness. And if you want to implement ArcGIS Indoors now, you can simply add it to your current ArcGIS Online organization subscription. ArcGIS Indoors didn't really do office-based reservations at the time. Instead, it integrated with Microsoft 365 Outlook, which actually managed the reservations. ArcGIS Indoors acted more like a map-centric interface to Microsoft 365. Each reservable cube had to be set up in M365 as a resource room, and then an attribute was manually entered for the room in Indoors to tie the two together. When a user made a reservation through Indoors, Indoors would query M365 for availability and then submit a request to reserve the resource. Beyond that, Indoors had no real connection to the reservation. Users would have to log into Outlook to edit or delete a reservation. There was no way to show a reserved cube on a map or to generate usage reports. However, we knew that Esri was working on a solution to this, so we implemented it as is with an eye to migrating to the new solution when it became available. Let's talk for a minute about the occupants layer. The occupants layer was perhaps our biggest challenge from the very beginning and really remains so today. And I would imagine this is a big challenge for anyone wanting to implement Indoors. The whole data model for Indoors depends on having a feature class with employee information. The unique identifier for the employee on the table is just their email address. But the table also includes their name, phone number, title, and department. And with 15,000 or so employees, we have dozens of changes each week, sometimes even more than that. So we had to come up with a solution to automate maintenance of this feature class. My teammate Fred will talk more about this in a few minutes. Oh, but wait, there's more to the occupants layer than meets the eye. The occupants layer is also where the hotel assignments are stored. So a field in the occupants layer called area ID is populated with the GUID for the hotel. And if an employee is assigned to more than one hotel, which is perfectly acceptable, then a copy of that row is made so that another area ID can be stored. This is repeated for every hotel assignment, which means that an employee could have several or even dozens of entries in the occupants table. So this makes keeping the occupants table updated even more challenging, because if you simply overwrite the occupants table to update it, you will lose all of your hotel assignments. So given all those challenges, just a quick run through of the major blocks of work that we had to do to implement ArcGIS Indoors. We started with, of course, converting the AutoCAD floor plan data to ArcGIS through those workshops, through some of the outsourcing. We had to set up new ArcGIS Online subscription to be used exclusively for indoors, configure it with single sign-on through Azure AD, and then, of course, publish all the feature layers and web maps, configure the indoors viewer and space planner applications, all that good stuff. At the same time, we had to set up a Microsoft 365 Outlook resource room for every cube that would be reservable, add the room, and then once that was created, we get the email for that resource, and we have to put that email as an attribute on the cubicles polygon. At our initial rollout in October, if I recall correctly, we had somewhere between 400 and 500 cubicles that were reservable, so we had to create 400 to 500 of these resource rooms in Microsoft 365. And probably most importantly, we had to devise automation to populate that occupants feature layer with every employee that would be eligible to make a reservation, keep it up to date, and maintain those hotel assignments. We also devised a way to automatically assign people to hotels in a back-end process that Fred will tell us more about shortly. The introduction of the reservations layer to the product was a major improvement and enabled us to meet many of the initial project requirements that were unattainable to our initial implementation. For example, once we implemented the reservations layer, users could edit and delete reservations from the Indoors app. Reserved cubes can be symbolized on the map like we see here, and new cubes could be made reservable entirely within ArcGIS, no more sending a request over to the Outlook team to have a new resource created. Now that we had the reservations layer as a GIS layer and could use all of our GIS tools and skills on this data, including symbolizing reservations on the map, generating usage reports, and creating dashboards. We'll see more about this in a few minutes too. This is when our decision to go with a GIS-based reservation system really began to pay off. However, one of the side effects of introducing the reservations layer was that a viewer level license, which is what Esri supplied to us in the beginning, was no longer adequate. Since a user is technically editing a table when they make a reservation, and a viewer level license cannot edit tables. As a result, Esri had to supply us with an unlimited number of editor license levels, and we had to convert all of our users. To the Esri business, this is a much more expensive license, and there must have been some interesting conversations going on in Redlands between the Indoors product team and the business executives because everything in ArcGIS Indoors licenses was about to change. The business side of Esri must have realized that their licensing model was not sustainable. Licensing by the square foot of data in a model was awkward and couldn't be verified or enforced. Including an unlimited number of editor licenses was not going to fly. So a new license model was introduced at the beginning of 2023. It's based on a fixed cost for Indoors as an organization extension. In addition, a new user type called the Indoor User was introduced. This would now be the user type that they could offer in unlimited quantities when you purchase ArcGIS Indoors Spaces organization extension. This change would end up being one of our biggest challenges since the initial implementation. Because as we all know, when a business is giving something away, they put as little into it as possible. In this case, that meant user type capabilities. And for more on those limitations and how we solved the problems that they caused, I'll turn it over to my teammate, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Hey, my name is Bill Keller. I'm a GIS specialist for the King County GIS Center. I was responsible for making our hub site and several of the applications that we're going to be talking about throughout this presentation. As Michael mentioned, Esri's decision to add a new user type had a significant impact on how our users interacted with our indoor system. Originally, we just simply sent our users to the ArcGIS Online site for indoors, and from there they could access the reservation application and any help documentation they needed. The organization website is viewable to the public, but with the introduction of the indoors user type, signed in indoors users were no longer able to view their own ArcGIS Online site. What this essentially meant is that an anonymous user of the public had more access than a signed in indoor user. In addition to not being able to view the ArcGIS Online site, indoors users also lost the ability to view common applications such as dashboards, web app builders, and more. The diagram that's being shown on the screen shows a list of all the capabilities that users had previously as a viewer and editor. That's on the bottom underneath the red box where it says viewer. You can see it has all the app bundles and essential apps in there. And I put a little square specifically around the organization website. And then if you look above for the indoor user type, you'll see that they can't access anything on there at all. So with the loss of all those capabilities, we needed to find a solution that met all of our needs and can act as a one-stop shop for all of our users, editors, and admins. So this is where ArcGIS Hub came into the picture. After talking with our Esri reps and experimenting for ourselves, we found that the Esri Hub site could meet all of our needs. Firstly, the Esri Hub site has the capability to add custom subdomains that comply with King County's guidance on website URLs. So that was a huge plus for us. It also served as a location for folks to come in and make reservations, access training materials, display metrics, and much, much more. All of this was able to be embedded into a single hub site that was responsible for, or excuse me, that was responsive to each user's needs. So whenever I say responsive, what do I mean? In the example of the image being shown on the screen right now, you can see what it looks like as an anonymous viewer of this web page. So if any of our audience members today were to navigate to our indoors reservation website, this is what you'd see. On the site, there's a sign-in instruction animation, which, by the way, has been just a huge help for helping people understand how to sign into our system. And in addition to that, there's also a story map highlighting how we use indoors at King County. So once you're signed in, the view actually changes. The first thing you might notice once you're signed in is a little dashboard that displays the name of the signed in user and who their agency captains and admin contacts are. Since we're a really small team that is creating indoors, we rely on agency captains to handle the majority of questions and concerns that our indoors users have. Josh is going to talk about these captains later on in the presentation. The next thing that a signed in user would notice is that a row underneath the dashboard that we just talked about appears. Esri Hub sites have the capabilities for rows of content to only be displayed to specific audiences. In this case, the row is displayed to only organization users, and it also contains a dynamic gallery. The gallery itself is also is also responsive to the user and only shows applications that they have access to. For example, on this site, on the right-hand side in the red box, you can see there's only one application listed. It's that King County indoor viewer. But on the image in the middle of the screen on the bottom, you can see there's actually two applications. So this is shown in the same row, but with a different user logged in. So the second user has access to not only the indoor reservation viewer to make their reservations, but also a dashboard where they can go and view metrics for our usage. Next slide. Another really nice thing that we have is a dedicated training page that's been invaluable both to us as administrators and for our users. One of my strongest recommendations for anyone considering implementing indoors would be to create a really robust documentation system. I'd like to give a huge shout out to Josh for creating and maintaining these documents for all of our users. And here's a quick sample of what some of our documentation looks like. Next slide, please. And the last set of dynamic content that I want to talk about is this row that's only visible to our administrators and space planners. This is another row that's hidden to users by default, unless you are specifically assigned as a space planner or administrator role. And it also contains a dynamic gallery. Within this selection, we have applications for editing floor plans, layouts, and hotel assignments for both our production and dev versions. We also have an app that lets us quickly assign agency captains and admins to our various hotels. Not shown here is one of our new applications we have to allow floor managers to check in and out occupants as they arrive and depart. They can also cancel reservations. This is actually not a default feature of Indoors. Out of the box, only the person who made the reservation and an ArcGIS Online administrator are able to modify reservations, including canceling or checking in and out. But with the new application that we've made, it remedies these restrictions, and it also allows for the exporting of anonymized data that our management can use for any analysis. Lastly, we have the Hotel Active Directory Association Editor. This allows us to modify what Active Directory groups are associated with each hotel. Managing the Indoors data and Active Directory Association has been a huge task for us here at King County. And to talk more about our data management, I'm going to pass it on to Fred.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, I'm Fred Lott, and I'm a GIS developer for the GIS Center. Yeah, there are 8 of us on the Indoors team, and this is not what we do full time. So even with the help of agency representatives, there's no way we could manually maintain all of those user lists and hotel assignments. Out of the box, like we said, Indoors only supports that manual management of adding occupants to hotels. So with potentially thousands of users, that would be completely unsustainable for our team. So we had to develop ways of automating the Indoors backend. So I'm going to review some of the tasks that we have for managing employee changes, hotel assignments, and producing data sets better suited for reporting. Our ETL process for occupants data is critical to the everyday operation of our system, as there isn't a way to sync Indoors occupants directly with Active Directory out of the box. So this is our solution for integrating those two systems, and I'll give a quick overview of the process shown in this diagram. We worked with our data services team in KCIT to extract lists of employees and their Active Directory group memberships, and we load them into tables into our enterprise geodatabase. So that lets us compare to our existing occupants list and figure out who needs to be added, deleted, or modified within the system as people join, leave, or switch positions around King County. So we're a big enough organization that there are daily changes to the employee roster. So I looked last night and we had 62 deletions, 96 additions, and 22 updates to our employee list of, I think, about 18,000 plus people. So rather, like I mentioned before, rather than manage all those hotel assignments directly by employee name, we grant employees a hotel membership using Active Directory groups that Bill mentioned earlier. So these groups are already in our system. We use them for email lists and things like that. So this lets us leverage existing user management infrastructure that we already had. So there's hundreds of groups. They represent multiple levels of granularity, and so that's perfect for assigning these to hoteling areas. This also makes it easier for us to assign multiple groups to a hotel or give one group access to multiple hotel areas without kind of going in one by one. So finally, we use SQL Server views and a scheduled Python script on an application server to sync all those changes with our hosted feature layers on the Indoors portal. So this fully updates the occupants table and hotel assignments for the next day. And then beyond that essential daily data maintenance, we need to monitor and summarize usage of the system. However, the Indoors information model doesn't have everything we need in one place. Stuff is spread across many different tables. And we have departments that want to track their usage. So we want to do things like associate reservations and hotel information with organizations and departments, things like that. So to support those data requests, we use a series of notebooks to prepare versions of reservation data and summary tables in a format that's easily brought into dashboards or the analysis tool of their choice. And for the indoors team, we have additional jobs that reduce our own manual maintenance. And in all of these notebooks, we're using the Pandas library extensively as an efficient way to handle all of our tables and do data analysis. With all of that pre-processed data, we can put together summary dashboards to report on system utilization, like this high-level overview that we're looking at here. Bill and Michael built all these dashboards, and we've got them wrapped up in an experience builder application, so you can just flip through all of them in one place. So we have detailed reporting that's needed for agencies to see when and where reservations are being made, and that allows management to charge departments based on their utilization of office space. By joining all of that reservation information to organization information and location data, that allows our agency partners to really filter and drill into detail on their usage. And you can see how many filters are available for them to kind of hone in on exactly what they want to see, if they want to look at time or space or things like that. We also have an overall facility dashboard that helps track how much of our space is managed in indoors. So we have 3 sites and 6 buildings across the county that are currently using it. And we can see here how much of that space in those areas is actively part of indoors. And finally, we have an account activity dashboard that tracks our logins and account creation in the portal. And we've seen a steady climb in our user accounts since going live and onboarding more agencies. And now I will pass it along to Josh to cover some of the lessons that we've learned from this project.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Josh Popelka. I'm a GIS specialist with the GIS Center. I'm going to talk about some lessons learned, kind of both the technical aspects, lesson learned, and users and education and communication, and how we've kind of managed thousands of users and keeping them updated on the latest changes, and as well kind of talk about where we're at today with indoors. So you kind of see the steps King County took for implementation and those customizations. As early adopters, we have a unique perspective, and we can offer some insights and lessons learned for other organizations. The first being we had a slow rollout to users. Wasn't a slow ramp up to implement the program, but we rolled it out slowly to users because it had limited testing, and we wanted to make sure that we had everything nailed down before we fully ramped up to a full system. It allowed us to troubleshoot issues before they affected multiple users, figured out how to import CAD drawings into indoors, troubleshoot and learn those new indoors geoprocessing tools, and develop and fine-tune that automation for importing and removing occupants from the system that Fred talked about earlier. Another aspect was finding authoritative and accurate floor plans. Locating that authoritative floor plan data was difficult, and it still remains a significant hurdle for our team. Floors continue to be remodeled to accommodate current levels of staffing, so there's always some kind of flux and change. Our team had to learn the basics of AutoCAD so we could clean that data, and that clean data is really essential for indoors so that features can be accurately represented in the system, so you don't have hallways bleeding into rooms bleeding into cubicles, etc. They all have to be closed up. And in some cases, we had to combine multiple documents, reach out to staff, use a combination of PDFs, CAD drawings, JPEGs, ArcGIS Pro processing tools, and manual editing after the fact in Pro to create those accurate floor plans. So acquiring that data, cleaning it, and using those geoprocessing tools was a pretty big learning curve for our team. The automation and QC checks. Without automation, we would simply not have the staff resource to implement the indoors program. And Fred mentioned that earlier, but we automatically load changes from those users from Active Directory groups, assign those hotel permissions that way as well. So manually editing that, dozens, hundreds, thousands of changes, depending on when we would get around to editing, just was not feasible. So depending on organization size, you could go that manual route, but it's not realistic workflow for a large organization without some kind of out of the box or custom automation. The lack of customization options within the application itself is also kind of a hurdle to overcome. So we've had to learn how to manipulate the existing schema and create arcade scripts, outside editing tools that Bill talked about earlier to present our users with a better experience and simplify our work as well. All these edits can be done in Pro, but these apps really simplify that process, kind of take one task at a time. So you're not trying to, deal with 5 different things all at once and try to tie things together, because it really introduces a lot of opportunities for an error, especially when it's manually done. So it's been a lot of customization, side processes. It decreases the demand on staff too. So we, like Fred was saying earlier, we have a lot of other work to do as well. So if we can simplify these tasks and these simple processes and automate some things, really frees us up to do other work. And then adapting that to software updates and changes. Change is inevitable, especially with a new system. Some of these changes were outside of our control, though. So standing up a brand new system, being an early adopter, meant that we had to be adaptable, adjust to those changes as Esri learned themselves, about this program, and released in different and improved versions as we went along. Yeah, and this slide is more about the user end of things and like how we communicate with them and make sure everybody knows and is on the same page. So departments have become really interested in the data for utilization reporting and to get an idea of how many people are coming into the office, what resources they're using. Out of the box, Indoors doesn't really support those efforts, but the reservations data can be manipulated and exported for use in Power BI, Tableau, or even within the ArcGIS Online app universe like Instant Apps, dashboards, and Experience Builder. User support structure and communication. So we set up, when it was rolled out, KCIT put a structure in place, working with departments, divisions to have an agency captain and agency admin. So these were staff outside of King County who were trained as first responders to Indoors issues. It streamlines that support for simple issues. So like, hey, I can't log in, rather than go through the full process of submitting a ticket, goes in the top of the hopper, gets filtered down to us, may take hours. It can just be a quick message to their local division knowledge base saying, hey, I can't log in. They'll fix that issue quickly. If those issues need to be escalated, we're of course available. The agency admin and captain will work with our team to solve that issue. So by integrating staff in the process and familiarizing them with common issues, we're able to provide quick support to all users and solve those problems efficiently and quickly. We've also put out a few user surveys to kind of see how people are using the software and where we can improve and where, if we can't improve it ourselves, what are some ideas we could feed back to Esri. So we've implemented the change that we could, but we've communicated those bigger, broader changes back to Esri, such as adding like feature requests, functionality requests, and that kind of thing. And lastly, developing some training materials and standards. It's a complex system. There's lots of strings to tie together to make it work. We've developed training guides for users and standard operating procedures for our own team. And by providing users and staff with training materials, we're able to reduce the amount of tickets we receive, and on the other end of it with staff, standardize some of our workflows. So theoretically, any GIS staff member can use those SOPs to perform, perform basic Indoors maintenance tasks and spread out that work, lessen the impact on, so the work isn't going to, just one person or just 2 people. Really, anyone with access to the software can update and maintain it. Next slide. And where we're at today. So you've kind of heard how we ramped up, what we learned, and then what's going on today. So this is some numbers we have from April 9th, so like 3 or 4 days ago. We have 6 buildings, 48 hotels, 813 reservable units. So that counts like cubicles, offices, collaboration spaces, and pods, which are like a collection of cubes, and over 1,500 active users. We've seen a consistent increase in the usage of the software over the last 2.5 years, and we fully expect to see those numbers to continue increasing. They're not going to be less anyway. But luckily, we've built a robust system with automation, QC checks, and some established workflows, and we'll be ready to serve those users when they do come on board. The future of indoors at King County is something that we're really excited about. There's a lot of use cases we could implement. Agencies are really interested in how it can help them manage their indoor spaces, how it can help their work, how it can improve safety, that kind of thing. And Tamara Davis, our GIS Center Manager, will now talk about the road ahead and some opportunities we see to expand the program.
The road ahead, we're considering opportunities to expand use cases for ArcGIS indoors beyond cube reservations. Capabilities such as integrations with work order asset management systems to better support facility maintenance, and other ideas such as a wayfinding kiosk to help the public navigate government buildings. The Wastewater Treatment Division is looking at opportunities with indoor GIS and the potential for a digital twin. We're looking at 2 very large wastewater treatment plants, West Point and Brightwater. They are very complex facilities with numerous assets and alerting systems that would benefit from being mapped to support workers who need to quickly access and navigate these facilities. We want to thank you for your time and URISA for inviting us to speak today. And now we'll open up the discussion for questions. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for showcasing your work. For those of you who joined after introductions, we've been listening to the 2023 winner of the eSig Enterprise Systems category, the King County Smart Building Management System. So let's continue with some questions. Be sure to enter yours using the Q&A function. It's usually located at the bottom of your Zoom window. To capture for the recording, I will go ahead and share 2 questions that have been answered during the presentation. The first is the hoteling reservations feature part of Esri Indoors, or did you configure Indoors to meet your needs? And the answer was the reservations layer is a built-in option of the application. There are fixed schemas for the layers though, so you may need to configure glue layers tables to meet your specific needs. An additional question came in: how much of a lift was the process to configure the CAD floor plans to be acceptable in Indoors? Answered, it was really varied on a floor plan by floor plan basis. Indoors expects a very simple drawing configuration, so there's a lot of consolidation and removal of unneeded items. And the follow-up question was, for any given changes to a floor plan, do you have to create the entire indoor layer for that building, or can it be edited in place? As far as changes to a floor plan, it really depends on how complex or extensive the changes are. We've had small edits that we can handle directly with the GIS layers, but for things like floor-wide remodel, it's much easier to go back to CAD and reload the entire floor. Thank you for letting me capture those on the recording. And we do have some open questions coming in. Did you consider other BIM tools before settling on Indoors?
Would you like to take that, Michael?
Yeah, I can take that one. Let's see if I find my camera button. Hi. We did not specifically consider any other BIM solutions. What we considered were more tabular-based solutions. So our management had 2 requirements when they started looking at reservation systems. One was that it be suitable to the basic functionality of making office reservations for everybody employed in King County. But they also had a requirement that it include a map, essentially that it was map-based. So they didn't want to just have a list of spaces to reserve from. They wanted to have a map where you could visualize where you're going to be reserving your space. So for that reason, several of the off-the-shelf systems out there are some that offer floor plans, and they were looked at. And I think I might have mentioned we also looked at building our own from scratch. And we did a prototype where we were implementing features from Microsoft Dynamics, as well as features using the JavaScript API to tie into just basic GIS layers of floor plans. In that case, not in the indoors information model, just kind of a homegrown schema for the floor plans. In the end, it was decided that getting as close to a SaaS solution that met those requirements was what we wanted. And we made the case that going with Esri was a good choice because we have a large amount of staff who are really experts with Esri software. And we made the pitch too that beyond reservations, indoors could be used for quite a few interesting things that were mentioned earlier, but I'll just mention again, potentially for asset management, for work order management on indoor spaces, and for mapping health and safety features within buildings.
I'll just add that I didn't quite get across earlier is that indoors was another strategic opportunity to further the vision of GIS as another core enterprise platform for King County. And as Michael said, we had a lot of experience already and a lot of staff support available for it. So.
Another question came in, do indoor upgrades cause havoc with your customizations?
They certainly can. Trying to think of the last time we had a major problem with that, and it's not coming directly to mind. Usually, like we kind of focused on this user type problem, and that was the most disruptive change that came. And I think it's safe to say if you're implementing it now, you're not going to have to go through probably a change that drastic. I will also mention though that with each new version of Arc Pro, there's generally an update to the information model as well. So the last time they updated Pro, we got a new feature, which was to be able to make recurring reservations. Prior to that, you could make one reservation, and if say you wanted to come in every Wednesday, you would make a reservation for Wednesday, and then you'd make another reservation for the next Wednesday and another reservation for the next Wednesday, potentially for the whole year. Some folks did that. So they introduced a new feature that allows you to just choose every Wednesday in perpetuity or for a particular time period, and it'll make all those reservations in a batch for you. In order to implement that new feature, we had to make a schema change to the reservations layer. So it wasn't terribly disruptive, but it did require schema change.
If I could just add to that, we have had a couple things because we've been along for the ride on this since fairly early on. There have been several times we've had changes that have required us to completely kind of redeploy a new version of the app, redeploy a new version of our floor plan layers and things like that. So if there are big schema changes, you had to have really good backups because you might have to completely refresh the whole thing. Yeah.
That's a good addition. Another question we have is hotels a term that Esri is using in the schema that's part of the solution out of the box that refers to any space that's reservable, or is that a term that the King County indoor team came up with?
No, that's Esri terminology.
I'd also add that this question and I'll say issue came up in a special interest group discussion at the UC conference last year. And there were some folks that had implemented indoors and they were really lobbying Esri to move away from that kind of nomenclature. I guess it maybe is a little bit of a hot button for some folks. Didn't like that naming convention. And I think Esri is taking it under review. So.
That is an interesting perspective. I wouldn't have thought of that. So I wonder, for those of you on the team, what's a piece of advice you could offer to others who are inspired by what you showcased today, your smart building management system?
Start small and manage expectations.
Yeah, I would say invest a lot of time, training, and effort in automation. Learn, like Michael said, start slow, but if it does ramp up quickly, you'll probably get flooded if you have a bunch of manual processes, and also document things really well, because it's hard to keep track of, especially when things are changing all the time. So yeah, documentation and training.
The documentation has been huge. There's a reason that we have a sign-in instructions animation on the homepage of our indoor site. So it's coming big, and yeah, documentation.
I think also having those agency contacts, kind of like deputizing people in different departments and divisions to kind of be their captains. I think that's been really good because it helps them feel like, they're kind of participating in the whole process. It gives us a kind of core group of people that we need to keep more up to date on upcoming changes and things like that. And they can disseminate it out to their whole working group and whatever kind of processes they might have within their own team. And I think that's been helpful as well. Also helping us sort of funnel through like change requests or help requests, having things go through someone directly within their team first has been really, really helpful for us.
I would echo what Fred said. When you're implementing a system like this in a large organization, there's absolutely no way we would be able to field all of the requests for changes from individuals. And this gives us somebody to point to for folks if they do want changes to occur, that it goes through somebody within their own agency and it's discussed and decided on by the appropriate person or group of people within the agency. And then it comes to us. So I think that was a brilliant approach to managing such a large implementation with impacting so many individuals.
Those are some great pieces of advice. Thank you for sharing those. Another question came in. How do you get senior leadership to buy in on this entire project? It seems like a difficult conversation.
I'll let Michael answer this as well after I'm done, but I guess I would say that, when the pandemic hit and we were in a situation where change was happening rapidly and 2 buildings were being shut down, a good solution was needed. And one of the things that we were able to do, since we had the Advantage program with Esri, is we were able to quickly move on an implementation without having to go through a lengthy RFP process and review different types of solutions and go. I mean, that process could have taken a really long time. And so I think that was really the timing and the situation that we were in is really how that was possible.
Yeah, you might say we were in the right place at the right time, although it was really the wrong place at a bad time, just because COVID. The senior management knew what they wanted. They wanted a way for people to reserve spaces because after we got sent home, they removed all of our permanent spaces. While we were gone, they removed all assignments for all cubicles in these buildings, and so there was no specific place for you to go back to work. So they knew they wanted to do this hoteling type situation, and reserving spaces as a natural function that you would need if you're going to do that. I guess you could just have a free for all and have people come in first come, first served. And some folks do that, which is fine. The thing I guess that we did was to pitch that this one solution could be expanded for greater functionality as well. That's why the name of our presentation when you introduced us was Smart Building Management. it's not just hotel reservations in that title, because we really did want to try to move into that a program or a product, I guess, of smart building management where we could potentially include work order management or asset management beyond just hotel reservations.
I think that was very smart to plant that seed in the title, plant it early and get that in front of people. Do all reservations use the system? And after talking about the senior leadership conversation, do you have complete executive buy-in?
So buildings that require reservations use the systems. We have about 105 facilities across King County. And so not all facilities require reservations. And not even all spaces within the 2 buildings that we implemented require reservations. So I would say yes, all reservations use this system where they're required. And yes, we have executive buy-in. And I'm not going to say that it wasn't necessarily a little rocky at times. We did implement this. It was a new system, and I think Michael talked about this about with challenges at the beginning that that some folks wanted a functionality that just wasn't available yet, and we tried to do things to make it easier for our users, but also give that feedback to Esri so they have it on their roadmap, and we have already experienced some of the benefits of that rolling out into their follow-on versions. But Michael, if you want to add to that, please do.
I would just add, expanding on what you said, not every space that people go to is in the system or reservable. Not all of our buildings are in the system, but there's no competing systems. There's no other reservation systems that are also implemented by King County. So if you are going to do reservations in King County, there's enough executive buy-in that you will be using this system.
That makes sense. And a follow-up question to an earlier one to capture for the recording that was answered on the Q&A app is, do you use videos for training? Many do not read the documentation, no matter how good it is. And the answer was, we have a training guide with links to short videos for specific tasks. It's always a challenge to educate the users on new functionality, but we can field the question and point them to the documentation for most issues. So we have both written text with screenshots and those that also link to videos. Thank you for answering that one. We have time for one more question if someone wants to throw one in the Q&A really quickly. All right, I don't see one coming in, so I'm going to ask, what has been your favorite aspect of the system?
This totally falls into any new GIS implementation in my opinion, and the whole, like, you want to see something cool? Come over here and look at this. I mean, we're mapping the indoors now. I mean, I know that's self-referential, but it is a totally different concept, right? For GIS folks. I mean, we've been, mapping things on the earth our whole careers. And so now mapping indoors it's a whole new world, and it's exciting. That's my answer.
The wow factor is pretty cool. We didn't show this, but you can also, all these building plans are in 3D. So you can actually 3D visualize your buildings and floors. And we're not very advanced in that section yet, but that's something that when we do show it in 3D, it's got a big wow factor. And I think we'll be working on improving our 3D aspects of that in the future. And I guess the thing that I'm excited about too is that, as we mentioned, expanding out to other uses beyond reservations, there's more interest, more questions coming to us, more people asking us, can we use this for asset management? Can we map all of the network outlets in this building? Can we map where all of the workstations are? And I think something like that will actually happen, which is what we promised at the beginning.
For me, it's been really rewarding to get direct feedback from our users and implement kind of those changes that people want to see. So early in the presentation, Josh mentioned that we sent out a survey to users of, hey, how do you like the system? How would you like to see it improved? And we have done a really good job implementing as many of those requests as we can. A lot of the applications and things we showed off in this presentation are a direct result of people's requests. So our management wanted to see metrics, so we created this robust dashboard for them to be able to view this. They wanted to see metrics in a different way, so we created more dashboards and more flexibility and capability to do this. We have reservation managers, so like the entire 6th floor has one person that is responsible for checking in and out people, making sure everyone is getting to their assigned desks, making sure that they have canceled reservations or not. And we were able to create them a tool that they could use to then be able to monitor who's coming in and out more easily, who's checked in, who had to cancel for today. We have a tool that we created for the 6th floor just for them, but we also made it with it in mind that we want other floor managers to be able to use this too. So it's been really rewarding to take this direct feedback from folks at King County and implement those changes.
Yeah, I think my favorite aspect has been, and there's a lot of them, but I think working with our small, tight-knit team has been really a great experience. There's a lot of people who are, way smarter than I am and are really, really great at things that I am not. So it's been great, like a big learning experience, getting to know them, getting to know other teams in KCIT, getting to know other divisions, staff, and also kind of the side benefits of any new system, like learning AutoCAD, learning technical document writing, that kind of thing. So it's been a great experience all overall.
Yeah, just actually kind of going off a little bit of what Josh and Bill were talking about. It is really nice to help just kind of build more relationships across the county, and especially people that might not be interacting with our other GIS products on a daily basis. This is a really nice introduction for them, kind of put a strong foot forward for us to let them see what we can do. And it's a very tangible, useful thing for them, in their everyday life. Maybe they have gone to our parcel viewer every now and then, but this is something they might be using, every single week to do stuff. So it's really nice to be able to help out all of our coworkers that way.
Well, what a positive way to help wrap us up. Thank you, Tamara, Michael, Bill, Fred, Josh, and the rest of the team from King County. And congratulations again for being the 2023 URISA eSig Exemplary System in Enterprise Systems category. Michael, if you'd stop sharing your screen, I'll go ahead and get us wrapped up here. Thank you so much. All right, I wanted to give a big thank you to our attendees for joining us today. We do hope you'll join us again soon for one of our many upcoming URISA programs. There are a number of upcoming webinars. We've got a GISP exam study session on May 6th. We have 2 more Excellence in GIS webinars, one on May 10th and another on June 14th. We have 2 GIS Leadership Academies coming up, one in Seattle in June and one in Fort Worth in November, as well as the inaugural Advanced GIS Leadership Academy in Chicago in August. URISA's annual conference, GIS Pro, will be in Portland, Maine this year. And as always, we encourage you to get connected and to stay connected. So thank you so much for joining us today. Again, thank you to King County for that wonderful presentation. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.